Now let's see what has become of our little butterfly. She is striving to move ever forward in self knowledge and in service to her beloved. God has been very good to her. Still, she can't just passively receive divine favor and presume complete security. She must not grow careless and wander off the heavenly path. It takes conscious intention to keep the commandments. Otherwise, what happens to the silkworm will happen to the soul. Once the silkworm has sown the seeds that will sprout new silkworms, it dies forever. I say that it sows seeds because it is my strong belief that God does not grant such favors in vain. If a person does not benefit directly from it, then the favor will benefit somebody else. God's blessing leaves exalted desires inside the soul, which cause her to live righteously and give generously to others. From contact with her fire, other souls will ignite. And even when the flames in the soul have cooled, her inclination to help others remains, and she delights in describing the favors God gives to whoever loves him and serves him. I know a certain person who went through this. She had drifted astray, but she was still happy to help others with the gifts God had given her. She taught the way of prayer to those who did not understand it, and it did them a great deal of good. Later, the beloved gave her light again. It's true that this person had not experienced the full spectrum of effects we have been talking about. But think of all those souls called by God to be witnesses like Judas was, or to be kings like Saul was, and then through their own unconsciousness fell off the path. And so, what this reminds us, friends, is that if we don't want to get lost like them, and we do want to grow in virtue, our safety lies in steadfast surrender to the will of God. I'm talking to those of you whom He has granted such favors. Actually, I'm talking to everyone. It seems to me that in spite of all I've said about this mansion, something of it remains obscure. It's obvious that great good comes to souls who make it to this place of prayer, but I don't want to give you the impression that you are hopeless if God has not granted you these supernatural gifts. True union is always available with God's help. What we need to do is to set our intention to attain it by tying our will unconditionally to the will of God. Oh, how many of us there are who claim to do this. We believe that there is nothing else we want and that we would die for this truth. Well, I will tell you now and tell you again later. If you have received this blessing from the Beloved, and your will is irrevocably resigned to God's will, then you won't even care about that sweet union we've been discussing. The most important thing about that union is that it arises from melding with the divine will anyway. Oh, how precious is that union! How blessed is the soul who has reached it! She will dwell in serenity in this life and in the next. Nothing in the world will cause her to lose her equanimity unless she finds herself at risk of breaking her connection with God or sees that her beloved is being dishonored in some way. She deals peacefully with poverty, sickness, and even death, except for the death of a true spiritual companion. The soul sees clearly that God knows what he is doing better than she knows what she is wanting. You should realize that there are different kinds of grief. Sometimes we are struck suddenly, and grief rises naturally out of our humanity, just as pleasure does. Sometimes charity and compassion for other sentient beings stirs grief in our hearts. This is what moved Christ to raise Lazarus from the dead. Union with the will of God does not preclude such feelings. But this grief does not disquiet the soul with restless passion. It passes swiftly. Remember how I said that spiritual consolations in prayer only seem to reach the faculties and do not touch the still depths of the soul? So it is with this kind of suffering. Bear in mind, friends, the silkworm must die. This death is at your expense. But union with the beloved reveals that a new life is about to unfold. And this glimpse helps tremendously with your dying. For now it is our job to live this life fully and put the silkworm to death consciously. I confess that killing the silkworm requires inordinate effort, but it's worth it. If you succeed, your reward will be manifold. You have no reason to doubt the possibility of true union with the will of God. This is the union I have longed for all my life. This is the union for which I pray without ceasing. This is the union that is clear and secure. But sadly for us, very few ever attain it. We delude ourselves into believing that if we simply embark on a spiritual journey and honor God with care, we have done all that we need to do. But there are always a few little insects lurking unrecognized until they have gnawed through our virtues. The damage happens through subtle self-centeredness, judging others in insidious little ways, neglecting to cultivate compassion, and forgetting to love our neighbor as ourselves. Even though we may plod along doing what we think is expected of us and not technically committing any sins, we don't make much progress toward uniting ourselves with the will of God.